Welcome to the Liquid Network podcast. I'm Antonio Vaccari, and for years, I've been in the trenches of winter maintenance, helping contractors and municipalities move from salt to smarter, more effective liquid programs. This show is where I sit down with people actually doing it, the operators, clients, suppliers, to talk about what really works, what isn't, and where the industry is heading. No fluff, just real conversations. So today I'm talking with Jay Price, one of the owners of Rembrandt Landscaping right here in Milton. It's been a family-run business for decades. On paper, they've already got equipment, Smart About Salt certifications, and Jay's going to bring a perspective for some of you that may not be as far down the road as he is, but that's a perfect way to get going. So let's get into it. Hey, Jay, thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony.
Yeah, excellent. So let's start. Tell me about Rembrandt.
So Rembrandt's a family-owned business. We've been in business since 1985, and my parents started it. And then my mom and I are business partners in it now, and we've been running it together for about 20 years now.
And Rembrandt, maintenance, construction, what do you get into?
We're pretty much mostly a maintenance summer and winter business. We do have summer construction projects that we do, but our main focus is on commercial and industrial maintenance for both summer and winter.
Awesome. Let's get into the heart of why we're here. Explain kind of when you started liquids, your journey, what sparked it, and a bit of that transition to where you kind of are here today.
So I guess it started probably about 6 or 7 years ago. The last real salt shortage that we had, we started getting into that pinch where we couldn't get salt. We were getting our prices that were going sky high. And, I just said to one of the people that worked with us, I said, there's got to be a better solution, something that's a bit more controllable. We went down to one of the SIMA shows down in Cleveland, and we started doing a bit more research on what it takes, what, people were using, how they were using it. And so that was kind of what started our kind of journey down the road. And then we started looking here, talking to yourself and other people about what's available, how we can use it, and kind of what the first steps are to start bringing it back into our program.
Yeah. Awesome. The salt shortage, costing, that's a big thing. And we'll get into that a little bit after. So why don't you give us a little bit of insight actually into your liquids program from day one up to now? What did you start with? Where did you go? Where have you come to, and where are you at today?
So we tried to jump in from the get-go, with both feet. We bought ourselves a 2,500 liter spray tank setup. We bought 2 storage tanks here at our yard so that we weren't having to run back and forth to different supply yards, and we could have it right here on site and use it as needed. We did try, to be honest, we did try to get into it full bore at the beginning, and we did find it a bit more difficult than I think we anticipated. And it was more just wrapping our heads around how we were doing it. We started realizing that we had to be a lot more proactive with it, as far as getting it down before the storms and what it was going to take and how many days. And, the hurdles started mounting for us a few times just because the operators and people that we had in our company were not really buying into it. So, that was the first kind of initial phase for us. And we kind of side tabled it for a little bit. But then in the last year or two, we've tried to get back into it, like you said, again, with the hurdles that we're seeing in our industry now as far as salting goes and what it's costing to do business. We really kind of tried to dive back into it last year, using it as a pre and a post application for our winter program.
And have you noticed any more environmental pressures? Have you been getting that, those questions about chlorides in the environment? We know we hear it on the radio, we hear it on the news, but are you finding it at your client level yet? Those questions?
From time to time. I mean, it's not a huge driver from the people that we work with. The biggest thing that we find is that when we do use it, people are surprised and they're not sure why this brown liquid is all of a sudden appearing on their properties. But then when you walk them through the process and tell them what it is, they kind of get this, smile on their face, realizing that, it is something that's more proactive and is a bit better for the environment than a straight rock salt.
Yeah, that's that's typical for most of our clients that get into it. That's, those are some of the first reactions, and the buy-in starts to grow from there. So kind of explain that in with your client base. What has the buy-in been? Has there been difficulties in the beginning, like we've seen with others? Was it a smooth transition? And are you hitting 50% of your clientele, or are you picking and choosing? What are you doing?
So last year we did try to hit a lot of our parking lots with the brine once salt became unavailable or an exuberant cost to us. So we did try to hit almost all of our properties parking lots strictly with brine for our post treatment. Sidewalks we were hitting probably about 50% using some of our sidewalk equipment that were equipped with the spray units. And as far as the customer buy-in, it's been pretty good. Once, like you said, once you kind of walk them through what it is and why you're using it, and they kind of get past it looks like you're spreading mud on their parking lot. The reaction from them is the same as if it were using salt, and you explain to them the environmental benefits, and they seem to be quite on board with it.
Yeah, and I guess it really comes down to, once they see it actually works, then they're like, oh, this is a win-win.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding for them, right? I mean, if they can see that it melts snow a lot faster and it's keeping their parking lots safe, if not more safe than it would with rock salt, then they're completely on board with it.
And would you say that you are doing more pre-spray anti-icing, or more post, or a combination of both? Because I am coaching a lot of clients right now as they're getting into this, that because they have existing salting equipment, I'm never saying we're going to get rid of salt. I'm saying, can we just use less by introducing a liquid program? So I kind of call it the hybrid method, where you anti-ice or do a pre-spray with liquid, and then you're going to finish it off doing post-treatment with your typical granular. What does it look like for you? Or again, is it a bit of a mixed bag depending on what the storms and what the situation is?
So right now, I think for us, an ideal situation would be exactly what you just lined out: a pre-spray before the storm to kind of inhibit that bond from the snow to the pavement, and then after that, you're using your rock salt to just clean everything up. Like I know last year we were using it mostly as a post spray, just because that was what was available, and that was what we were able to kind of keep everything safe with. But ideally, it would be a bit of a mixture for now until we can, again, get our feet back on the ground with a full liquid program. I think that's where we'd like to go a bit more, just because it is a lot easier to manage. It's a lot easier to handle than it is with a regular rock salt and having to deal with machinery and storage and things like that.
And that's interesting you say that, because again, I've been working with you for years, and you've built up to this point. Like, a lot of people won't recognize that for the first couple of years, that it can be easier. It can actually be a bit of a cost savings on equipment and infrastructure needs and what have you. So that's pretty true, correct?
I would agree 100%. I mean, when you look at, loading a truck with a 5-yard hopper compared to a spray tank, it takes a $500 transfer pump and a storage tank to transfer the liquid. It takes a $100,000 machine to load salt. So when you start working that out and then having to train people on how to run machinery, I think it's a no-brainer as far as that portion of it.
Yeah, that's true. And I was talking to someone last week, and they were telling me that last year alone, they spent over $30,000 on 2 or 3 of their salters with respect to corrosion and damage and repair. And in the last 4 years, they've only spent $250 on a couple of hose clamps and hose pieces and gaskets on their sprayer. And he said he didn't realize the expense in maintenance in comparison to the two. So he goes, that alone would have paid for another sprayer just there. And have you recognized anything like that?
100%. I mean, we have gone through a couple of transfer pumps here at the yard just from seals breaking or something going on internally with it. But like you said, when you compare that to, on average, a salter repairs, $1,100, $1,500. You can do a lot of pumps for that as opposed to replacing parts on a salter.
Yeah. So based on what you know today and your experiences, what would you say to a contractor looking to get into liquids? What's the one thing I guess you wished someone told you, or I didn't tell you, or I told you and you didn't listen, you wish you knew?
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say. You did tell me, and I listened, but I didn't believe it. It's you got to be patient. It's something that it's going to take you some time to figure out. It's going to take you some time to realize the cost benefit analysis of it. But you got to be patient with it, because if you're committing, say, $100,000 to the equipment that it might take to set yourself up. Be patient with it, because it truly does work. But you got to keep pushing through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something I preach this every day, and the hard part is it takes years to get there. I really don't have anyone in year one that said they totally understand it. It's usually year 3, year 4, and by year 5, a lot of guys are switching completely to liquid. And I'm not saying that's the way to go. I'm just saying it's possible. And so that's what that's, all about for us, and how we're trying to get more people involved in liquid in general.
Yep, and I agree with that 100%. You gotta stay the course on it. You can't just say, "Well, it's not working after 1 year," or "You're not understanding it after 1 year." You've got to keep pushing through, because it really does make a difference, in my opinion.
Yeah, awesome. And what would you say to someone who's heard, an old horror story, or came out about liquids that have gone badly, didn't work? It's what do they call snake sales oil salesman? Like, what would you say to someone that came to you and said that? Do you have a different mindset now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of doing your research if you're going to do something. Like you said, you and I've known you for a long time, and I talked to you a bunch of times before we actually got into this, and talk to people that know about it. When we went down to Cleveland to the SIMA convention, we talked to a company from Colorado that, like you said, has gone completely liquids, and they don't even use salt at all. So hearing those stories and knowing that it is possible, and just putting your own spin on things, I think is what I would say. It's just, get the information, figure out how it works for you, and then move forward on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what's next for Rembrandt and your winter program? Like, are you scaling to more sites? Are you getting more equipment? What's your next step starting this winter?
So our next step is kind of honing in more on the liquid applications, and making sure that it's working for us, as opposed to having to react with it. We want to try to get a bit more preventative with it, and getting it down there before the snow actually hits, so that we're not having to scramble or use as much salt afterwards to try to get, that extra little bit of hard pack melted down. And I think looking into more sidewalk units for us is probably what our next unit move is, as far as getting the liquid applications down.
And it's funny, because it almost seems like you've done it the opposite way. Because I typically try to tell guys, start on walkway, start small, get rolling, and that's changing a bit right now because of the salt issues, the demands, the costs, and what have you. And you kind of started a bit parking lot and walkways, and now trying to fully go on the walkway. So it's a little bit opposite to what I always say, but there's no right or wrong in this. It's just getting the job done, getting a job done right.
Well, and figuring out what works for you, right? I mean, we tried to jump in, like you said from the beginning. We tried to jump in at head first, sorry, and we ran into those hurdles, and it kind of deterred us. But now we're trying to get back to what we wanted to do with it, and we've got the bigger sprayer now for our truck. We've got a couple of sidewalk units, and I think if we can outfit the rest of our units with it, then it'll make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agreed. Kind of slowly wrapping up here, but an important one right now is, salt shortages, pricing, supply, the demand, the potential shortage. How are you guys thinking about it right now? And, did this salt price swing change how you've budgeted for this year and how you're going to attack it? I'm sure liquids will be a part of that. And do you think this is a one-off, or do you think it's the new norm? How do you think it's going?
I hope that it's not the new norm, because it doesn't only affect people in the landscape industry. It trickles down to everybody that, is associated with it: property owners, property management companies, retail stores, because when we get charged the more costly, a cost on the salt, we have to pass it on to somebody else, or else we go under as a business. So I hope that it's not the new norm, but I fear that it is, because I mean, when I first started buying salt, we were at $85 a ton, and now I think it's upwards of 125, 150. Like it's getting out of hand, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And so, with this swing and this change, did it change your budgeting, your bid, for commercial contracts? Did you have to look at things differently?
A little bit, yeah. Like, a lot of our contracts are locked in for this coming year as far as previous bids, but we're looking at different ways of how we can manage it, maybe using more liquids as opposed to the salt, and trying to minimize that cost difference so that we don't have to go back to our customers and say, hey, we need more money because this, and this. So we're trying internally as best we can to manage that and just kind of find different ways that we can do the job properly.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty cool. So before we wrap up, anything that we didn't touch on that you think others listening to this, other people getting into the business need to hear, with respect to obviously liquids and what's happening with that?
I think it's got to be a bigger push than I think, the industry realizes. There's a lot of guys that are just set in the ways of, this is the way we've done it. This is the way that, we know how to do it, and we don't want to change from that. But I think as we move forward, I think there's going to be a big push to make sure that we're being a lot more environmentally responsible, and it's got to be across the board, not just, the bigger guys that are doing it or the municipalities. I think everybody's got to start realizing that there are other options and we can do our part to help out.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of leans its way right into the Liquid Network, what we're trying to do to bring things together, and with our eco-filling stations. And we didn't touch much on it, but I'm sure you're aware of it. We're slowly trying to roll out more 24/7 automated stations that companies like yours could take advantage of. Even though you have your own storage at your facility, if there's a station in between any of your sites, it might be quicker, easier, faster, more time effective and cost effective to pop into one of those stations and pick up liquid on a demand. Because I really feel that's probably one of the biggest missing components of the liquid industry, being available, the liquid available.
Absolutely right. I mean, a guy can get a load of salt and just put a tarp on it and he's good to go. Whereas liquids, you have to have some sort of setup in order to have your own. So I agree with you 100%. That's always been, I would say, one of the bigger hurdles for guys to get into it is, well, I can get a load before the storm from you, but what do I do after that, right? And some guys are just scared of what could happen.
Yeah, well, Jay, I really appreciate you taking the time and being straight up with us about how this actually looks. That's what this show is all about. Real stories, real people doing the work. If you want to learn more about the Liquid Network, or you're thinking about making the switch yourself, check the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.